On this bunch, the grapes seem nicely ripe. They're high in sugar, which gives a very sweet wine. It even has a little taste of port. I'll make a good wine this year. At least, I hope so.
Ernesto is starting the harvest today with his family. His wine is produced on the very limits of the possible. Ernesto's vineyard is the farthest south in the whole North American continent.
In this region, it's very hard to go all the way to the harvest. I see it as a triumph of nature, the fact that the vine thrives so well here. There is such a struggle for water in this desert zone. The climate is really harsh. So yes, you could say it's a miracle to have so many nice grapes.
Once upon a time in the West, Los Comondú is a Garden of Eden in the far west. Los Comondú is in the Baja California region of Mexico. This 1,200-kilometer peninsula is dotted by around 100 islands of green. These are the oases of America. Around them is a vast desert the size of Italy. It only rains here for a few days per year, and temperatures can reach 50 degrees Celsius. Hence the name California, which comes from the Latin meaning hot oven. In this desert, the oases provide a Wild West backdrop. But in Los Comondú, it wasn't gold that brought the early pioneers, it was water. The first conquest of the West began here some 300 years ago, long before the gold rush. The first Californians from Europe settled here in Los Comondú. Long isolated and little known, the oases are today attracting fresh attention. Researchers are fascinated by this Eldorado, where water is turned into wine. The cowboys who still roam here show us around this earthly paradise. He could have gone in search of a different American dream. But at 27, Miguel Perpoli chose to stay in the Oasis town, where he was born. In Los Comondú, the wine is not the only miracle. There is also the exploit of raising cattle in the middle of the desert. Miguel is one of the last herders of Los Comondú.
Our cows are thinner than elsewhere because there's not enough rain. It only rains once a year, so we have to accept that our cows lose weight. We keep them with us, we buy them hay until it rains. After the rain, we release them and we can breathe a little easier.
In summer, The cowboy has no need for his lasso. Miguel has to wait patiently for the autumn rain before roaming again in the wide open spaces.
This has been in my blood since I was a kid. I love my cattle and I love being on horseback. That's why I stayed here.
In Los Comondú, there have been cattlemen since 1750. They have become part of its identity. And where there are cowboys, Indians are never far away. Some of these rock paintings date from 8,000 years BC. They bear testimony to the Kashmiri people, hunter-gatherers who came to find food at the oasis.
Look, there's a tortoise. I think they drew to express themselves. There's a stag. You can see its horns. They drew what they hunted, what they ate, and how they lived. Our ancestors arrived from Europe. The Aborigines who lived here interbred with the colonizers. And we are descended from this mix. The Pupuli, the Vigorosaga, typical names from here.
In a rare case in the Americas, the native Indians intermarried with the cowboys, with the blessing of the Jesuit missionaries. The history of California is inseparable from these religious men from the old continent who came to convert the populations in this arid land. For weeks, the missionaries walked across this desert. And when they arrived, exhausted, in Los Comondú, this is what they discovered. They saw it as an incarnation of a divine miracle. They built the mission of San Jose in 1708, making it one of the oldest in California. And God created Los Comondú. Until their expulsion in 1767, the Jesuits radically transformed the ecosystem of the oasis. But how did these men from the other side of the globe manage to create a sustainable community in the desert? The question has fascinated a group of researchers in Baja California. They are led by Aurora Braceda. For the past 15 years, this biologist has been retracing the history of this oasis. She is convinced we have much to learn about its past. When the Jesuits arrived, they discovered a very wild oasis, covered with palm trees, a little like you see here. They had to start from scratch to produce food and set up the mission. They had to transform this place and make it viable for agriculture. It was a huge undertaking, a titanic effort which they repeated in all the oases on the peninsula. To gauge the scale of transformations carried out by the Jesuits, Aurora goes back in time by investigating the plants. We are going to count how many we have of the same species.
40.
And the other one? The aim is to record in a square 10 meters by 10 all the species of tree, shrub, and other plants within that perimeter. That provides a sample of the vegetation. We have to repeat the operation to gain a good representation of the whole ecosystem. Fernando, let's measure this plant, its maximum height. Start here if you would. Thanks to this survey process, Aurora made an astonishing discovery. More than 1/3 of the plants recorded are not indigenous to the continent. The Jesuits therefore introduced most of the cultivable species, like the date palm. Until the missionaries arrived, there was only the Washingtonia palm, the endemic species in this part of America.
The Jesuits came from Spain. They already had knowledge of Oasis culture, thanks to influences from the Middle East. They brought with them the date palm, a resistant species that can grow here and which produces a lot of fruit. In fact, when one thinks of an oasis, the image of a date palm immediately comes to mind.
Among other imports from the Mediterranean basin are the vines grown today by Ernesto. His rootstock is the oldest on the North American continent. Most of the fruits growing here are familiar to us.
Buenísimo.
Delicious.
Here we can see a magnificent fig tree. It was brought here by the Jesuits to be cultivated along with olive trees and fruit trees, which give this land a Mediterranean feel. Wow, what an amazing cactus. We're in an arid zone after all. The desert is ever present.
These orchards are the Jesuits' legacy. Today, they are the symbol of Los Comondú. Each family has its own garden, like Virgilio Perpulli.
Here is a very sweet grapefruit, a pomelo. Here we have avocados. We also have bananas. This is a royal lemon. It's still green. They're very popular here and are only found in Baja California. It'll be even bigger when it's ripe. This is a little forgotten paradise. I compare it to the world described by the writer Fernando Jordan. He spoke of a Shangri-La. He said all that was missing is a river of milk, since everything else grows here.
These gardens mean every family can feed themselves year-round on a self-sufficient basis.
Here are my avocados. I can make 5,000 or 6,000 pesos in a season. But the main thing they provide me with is health, physical and mental health. It's as if all this gives me energy. They're organic and full of flavor. They're even better with a pinch of salt. With a tortilla, it makes the best breakfast. I'm nearly 83 and still going strong. Without those orchards, Los Comondú would not be the same. And everyone who's living depends on harvesting these fruits or the sale of sweet products would die.
The Jesuits did not only lay out these gardens, they also built a whole irrigation network like those found in North Africa. They transformed sandy and rocky beds into terraces for agriculture.
The system of gardens set up by the missionaries is very stratified, with various types of crops in the orchards. For example, there you have sugarcane, and above that, fruit trees. These arrangements took a lot of work. The whole natural environment was altered for this cultivation. It's actually the first form of agriculture in the Californians. It was here that California was born.
It was then the hand of man which shaped Los Comondú. But this miracle would remain a mirage without the presence of water. But where does it come from? To find out, you don't have to look at the ground, but at the high peaks, towards the Sierra de la Giganta, the mountain range which rises to 1,176 meters right above Los Comondú. Hydrogeologist Miguel Lamadrid is a specialist in high-altitude lakes, thought to be the water reserves of the Oasis.
Here in Los Comondú, the water comes from the peaks. When it rains, mainly in the summer, the rain falls and accumulates in these lakes. This one is located at an altitude of 500 meters. This is a characteristic that is not found in other oases around the world, where the water comes from the phreatic table. That's why I like to say you have to climb to see where the water comes from here.
We're
going to test the water quality we have here around the oasis. I'll take a water sample. At first glance, we see that it's cloudy, which is due to organic matter. Now, I'm going to measure the physical and chemical parameters. I can determine the salinity of the water, and it's evident that the water looks really salty. We have a reading approaching 1,100 microsiemens per centimeter. The salinity goes up when the water is stagnant. In Baja California, we have an arid climate with temperatures above 40 degrees in summer. The rate of evaporation is very high, and that means the water becomes more salty.
The presence of salt confirms that a significant volume of surface water quickly evaporates due to the high temperatures. But why doesn't the water evaporate completely? And how does it reach the oasis below? Miguel continues his exploration in the canyons above Los Comondú. The secret of the water supply to the oasis can be found in this rock.
This rock we have here is basalt. As you can see, it's very hard, but it contains cavities. This porosity was formed when the lava was a liquid. It contained a lot of gas, and those gases formed pockets. The fissures that grow out of these pockets play a key role in feeding the aquifer system. As such, the rainwater which accumulates in the lakes infiltrates into all these holes before ultimately arriving below and feeding the rivers of the oasis.
This basalt rock formed some 10 million years ago in the Sierra de la Giganta, when these now extinct volcanoes erupted. The oases of Baja California formed along the former lava flows, which became basalt rock. This basalt is present in the whole canyon system which surrounds Los Comondú, characterized by symmetrical columns shaped by the movement of tectonic plates. Nature here is an unrivaled architect.
These rocks look like a cathedral, or you might say the pipes of an organ in a church.
These natural monuments in porous rock constitute a vast water tower.
If we didn't have this water storage system in the fractured rock, the water which accumulates on the high plateaus would end up evaporating, and there wouldn't be a drop below. The oasis would not be permanent, but seasonal, or it might even disappear. Nature is truly ingenious.
The hydrogeologist's work has revealed the pathway of the waters of Los Comondú. When rain falls in the mountains, it collects in the high-altitude lakes. The part exposed to the air will evaporate, but a proportion of this water infiltrates the porous rock. It remains stored inside these cliffs before slowly flowing into the oasis below. The water stored in the rock reappears on the surface through this resurgence process.
This oasis is incredible. Imagine that the water we touched up there at an altitude of 500 meters, several kilometers from here, filters through these rocks before re-emerging in this magical place. Water is life. That is the magic of this corner of southern Baja California.
The aquifer system allows mankind to live in one of the world's most arid deserts. It has also made Los Comondú a refuge for hundreds of animal species, like this unusual lizard, Bipes biporus. This reptile looks more like a worm, and indeed it spends most of its time beneath the sand. Around 20 centimeters long, it has 2 front feet, but no lower limbs. It is only found here in the oases of Baja California. Other species depend entirely on the waters of Los Comondú. Like this aquatic turtle, an unlikely denizen of the desert. It makes a good find for a reptile specialist like Victor Velasquez.
This is a Trachtemis nebulosa. It's a species that is only found here. This one is a female. How do I know it's not a male? The females have a shorter tail. If it was a boy, his tail would come to here, longer and twice as thick. The head of the male comes to a very pronounced nose, whereas the female's is flatter, more rounded. This species only lives in this oasis, nowhere else. It needs water to live. If the oasis vanished, it would die out. Hence the importance of preserving the water to protect these turtles, so future generations can see them in their natural habitat.
Reptiles are excellent indicators for the state of health of the oasis. Victor has come to Los Comondú specially to count their numbers. For the lover of snakes, the place is a gold mine.
This is a water snake. Its scientific name is Thamnophis hamondi. It can be found around Los Comondú, as far as northern Baja California. Since he doesn't seem too upset, we'll take a few measurements and put him in the bag. There, he'll be comfortable.
The oases of Baja California have a high density of snakes. Victor is in search of the most feared of them all, considered one of the world's most dangerous serpents. The rattlesnake.
There, under the stone, is a Crotalus machelli. With its mimetism of the rock, it's almost impossible to see the snake. We can get a better look like this. The rattle on its tail is a defense mechanism. When the snake feels threatened by a predator, it immediately coils up and remains silent. But if I do this, it goes into attack position and activates its rattle. Once there were bison and stag. And to avoid being trampled, these snakes evolved by developing this alarm mechanism.
This rattle is also called the castanet. One ring is added each time it sheds its skin.
Here's the Crotalus ruber. It's magnificent. It's one of the 8 species found in Baja California, and the biggest of them all. Rattlesnakes play a major role in the ecosystem, since they control the rodent population. This species even eats larger prey, like hares and squirrels. It can detect the heat of its prey at night using sensors between its eyes. This snake has hemotoxic poison which destroys blood cells. Before being swallowed, the prey is already undergoing a degree of digestion.
Rattlesnake poison can also kill a human, as Ernesto and his family nearly found out to their cost.
It's a rattlesnake, but a juvenile. Ah, not so small after all. It must have come down from the canyon. Ah, it's quite a big fella. This little critter came for a tour around the vines, so you better be careful and wear boots. You can see its fangs. I'm going to make it spit out its venom.
Those who live in Los Comondú must accept rubbing shoulders with the local wildlife. The oasis is the only source of food in hundreds of kilometers of desert. Ernesto will have to start harvesting earlier than expected, before the grapes are ripe. Otherwise, there won't be a single bunch left.
These were bunches of ripe grapes, but they've been eaten by animals. Fortunately, the harvest is generous. We have to live off it too. Since it hasn't rained, the animals come down from the desert plateaus and seek food here. I don't want to drive them out or kill them. It's a natural cycle, and I respect it. Since I have a generous quantity of grapes, there's enough for the animals to eat some and for me to continue making my wine. Cultivating a vineyard here is a real battle.
It was a battle that Ernesto nearly lost 5 years ago.
Those are all my vines to make the wine. And look, there's nothing left. Thank God there was no loss of human life.
Part of Ernesto's vines went up in smoke on the 23rd of May 2015, when a huge blaze swept through Los Comondú. In total, more than 16,000 hectares of vegetation were destroyed by the flames. Wildfires are a part of life in these oases, naturally exposed to high temperatures. But this time, the cause was man-made. More and more gardens are being abandoned. This dramatic episode caught the attention of biologist Aurora Breceda.
There was a huge quantity of dry combustible plants, such as dry palm branches, which had accumulated on the ground. They are very flammable, as are the dry fronds at the top of palm trees. They can all catch fire very easily. And when the fire started in San Miguel, more than 3 kilometers away, the strong wind meant it all went up in flames.
But while mankind falls short at times, nature is capable of astonishing resilience.
The resistance and capacity for regeneration of this oasis is incredible. Only 2 months after the fire, I came to take some measurements, and I saw hundreds of little palms growing. The oasis was already in full regeneration mode.
But the situation could change for the worse. If the orchards are left abandoned, the risk of wildfires will increase.
The problem is that if such events occur more frequently, they could endanger the capacity for resilience of an ecosystem like that of the oasis. Ernesto's vines only just managed to rise from the ashes. This year, the grapes will have a special taste, that of revenge. The freshly cut fruit is laid on palm mats, where it will be left to ripen in the sun. In a few weeks' time, it will be turned into a delicious sweet wine. Ernesto learned his trade from his father and his uncle Virgilio. This winemaker is the first generation to have reintroduced grape growing, like the Jesuit fathers.
When we were young, we used to enjoy drinking wine. It was the only form of escape. There was no television, no phone. We could only read and drink wine. It gave us inspiration.
The reintroduction of vines could well bring Los Comondú out of a long slumber. Virgilio is now 83. His village has changed a great deal. When he came into the world in the 1940s, Los Comondú had a population of 2,000. There was even a jailhouse on a suitable scale for this little paradise.
We're in the San Miguel prison in Comondu. I don't think it ever had a roof. Once, they jailed youth for a minor offence. Then one night, he climbed over the wall and went back home to sleep. The next day, the sheriff caught him and fined him for a double misdemeanor, breaking the law and escaping. A few months later, he was jailed again, and he did the same thing. Except this time, he went home to sleep, but the next morning, after drinking his coffee, he quietly returned to his cell, and no one noticed he'd been gone.
Today, Los Comondú can no longer even count any bandits among its population. Only 400 stalwarts remain.
In my childhood memories, this place was full of people. The houses were all inhabited and families were large. There were more than 1,000 inhabitants in each of the two villages. Then people began to leave. Above all, many children from the village went to study in the big city because there is no higher education here. So people emigrated. They abandoned their homes.
For almost half a century, Los Comondú was like a ghost town. Old-timers like Virgilio remained. But the young who went off to study never returned.
Don't forget your gun along the way.
The years rolled by. Despite the reduced population, the oasis of Los Comondú is still here, in the middle of the desert. It has raised a new generation.
Don't forget to ring along the bell for stairs, son.
Fed on fruit and driven by the passion of the elders. But Los Comondú has not said its last word. There has been a stirring in the past few years. The Mexican authorities have decided to breathe new life into this oasis. The streets have been repaved, the Jesuit missions restored, and Virgilio has learned to cultivate the spoken word to capture the nostalgia of a bygone age and his hopes for the future. He has become a poet. This morning, he has been invited to read his poetry in Los Comondú's rebuilt school.
It was my turn to be born. By chance, I grew up among the date palms, with the blood of the Guaycura and Cochimi Indians running through my veins. I belong to those other Californians. We do everything we can so the young can get the most out of childhood. And we say to the young, let us get the most out of our old age. Because however old we may be, we were also once young. Who among you, when you're as old as me, will remain here in Los Comondú? Little scamps, you're all staying? Then me too. I'm going to read My Village's Smile. Here in Los Comondú, we like to laugh. We don't like people who grimace like this.
And so the young will stay in the oasis. Virgilio is putting everything into the wine. The original production dated back to the time of the Jesuits. Today, Ernesto is teaching his son to vinify the grapes. He is due to take over the reins. But first, he has to stretch this cowhide, then fix in this wooden frame. In the air, the hide becomes rigid and forms a basin. The grape juice will flow through these holes. Here, everything is artisanal. Ernesto makes his wine by hand, or rather, by feet. Biologist Aurora Braseda comes to watch the process, which also dates back to the missionaries.
Hola, ¿cómo estamos?
Hello, how are you?
Tiempo sin vernos.
I haven't seen you in ages.
Have you come to help me crush the grapes? Don't you want to come and dance?
Dance a few steps? I really wanted to come and see this stage. I was wondering if this technique still exists. I love it. These are old traditions which date back to the Jesuits. Reviving this is almost a historical archive. I'm thrilled.
Es un documental histórico, ¿no? A mí me encanta.
Would you like to try?
Absolutely.
Claro que sí.
Of course I would.
Get right in the middle.
This is so much fun. I'm doing pretty good, right? It's not so easy.
Go on, dance. It's the dance of the grapes.
Yo creo que eso ya está, ¿eh? Muy bien, cansado.
That's enough. I'm exhausted.
Pero se resbaló.
It's overflowing.
Y aguadito.
It's full of juice.
Ajá, se resbala. Lo increíble.
The incredible thing is this cowhide acts as a filter.
Con la piel. Y sí le da un sabor especial.
That must give it a special flavor.
Orgánico.
Everything is natural, organic, with no pesticides.
Tradicional, histórico.
United, traditional, historical. What more do you want?
Sustentable.
Sustainable too, and delicious.
Y sabroso. Además.
From this juice, Ernesto hopes to produce 2,000 bottles this year, which is enough to keep him and his family going financially for the year. In Los Comondú, they live with what nature provides. It is this model of sustainable agriculture that Aurora Braceda wants to promote to defend the oases of Baja California.
A mí me parece un paisaje espectacular.
I think it's a fabulous landscape.
¿No? Me parece
I'm a biologist,
espectacular.
so it moves me.
Pero además la gente.
But it's above all the
gente,
people,
de
these
sus
inhabitants,
saberes,
their
la
warmth,
calidez de
their ability to
ellos,
adapt,
cómo-
how they've learnt to
cómo
live here.
viven. Es hermosa. Sí, sí, sí.
It's
Me
true.
enamoré.
I've fallen in love.
Ya.
Aurora is not the only one to have fallen for the charms of this oasis. Every year in recent times, the 400 inhabitants of the oasis hold a wine festival. A jury of Mexican gourmets have come to award a prize to the best wine. Around 10 winemakers are in the running. From Los Comondú, like Ernesto, but also from neighbouring oases. His uncle Virgilio is in the audience, surrounded by his new fan club.
We're going to announce this year's winning wine.
The winner is Ernesto Murillo.
For Ernesto, this distinction represents the triumph of several generations before him. He pays tribute to his parents, notably his father, Virgilio's twin brother.
You see, Pa, I succeeded thanks to you. I followed your instructions well.
You're a very good son.
I'm proud to be from Comondu and to see my nephew win this prize. You have to work hard to make this original, 100% organic wine. Give me some wine so I can go and chat to the girls. I soon won't have any life left.
By reviving this tradition of wine production, Los Comondú can hope to rekindle the spirit of the pioneers. The wine, this miracle that the oasis manages to produce in the middle of the desert, has shown the community in a fresh light.
Thanks to man's intervention, a genuine ecosystem could emerge in the harshest of climatic conditions while respecting natural resources. That is a source of inspiration in a world of global warming.